So the first thing you need to do is start a drawing sheet. Notice that the size that defaults is a C. You can change this by right-clicking on sheet 1 and editing the sheet, changing that to a size D. You can pick whatever size you'd like depending on what you want to put in your portfolio, but a D size sheet is 22 inches tall and 34 inches wide. It's a good size sheet that you need to give me as part of your project. Start off by creating a base view. This is like dropping in the part file that you want to start with. For example, this part. You can change the scale if you want, but on a D-size sheet, most things can be a 1:1. Now notice I've also collected some of my own personal custom sizes. In this case, 3/4 inch to 1 scale. Make sure that you have hidden lines turned on, and the shaded can be turned off for now, but the isometric that we'll create will need it turned on. It defaults with selecting whatever you chose as the front view for your actual sketch when you created it in a part file. However, you can change that by choosing the change view orientation. It brings up a new window, allows you to select whatever front view you'd like. In this case, I like this front view, so I'll choose it. I want to look at the top and the right, as well as what the isometric will look like. That describes the shape pretty well, so I'll choose this front and finish the custom view. I'll drop it in wherever I want. If I hit OK, it drops the part wherever it last was on the screen. I want it down here in the corner. It immediately moves to being in the projected selection. So I want to project it up for the top, to the right, and as an isometric. Right click, create. I can then even come back in to the space just outside of the part inside of the view pane. Right click, edit the view, and turn the shading on for my isometric. I also want to make sure that my hidden lines are removed. It treats the isometric as if it is a separate view. The front can move in both height and width. The top only moves up and down, and the right only moves left and right. The isometric moves independently. Place it in the most appropriate space. Repeat this for the rest of your parts. Again, making sure that you chose what you feel is the best front view. Depending on what you chose as the front view will dictate your top and your right. And you may want to select something other than what defaults as the front because it may cause some hidden lines in one of the other views that you would need to dimension to. And you never want to dimension to a hidden line. If this happens, simply right click, delete the view. If you get rid of the front view, it deletes its dependents, which in this case are the top and the right. You then have to delete the isometric separately. Once you have all 5 parts put in, you can dimension them by going to Annotate. Choose Baseline most of the time, and all you have to do is select the object you want to dimension. Once it's selected, right-click, Continue, and then you can place the dimensions appropriately. Now in this case, it did choose Baseline as the right. That right edge isn't necessarily what I want as my baseline. So once I click to place it, I'll come over here to my left just to show you that you can switch it. Right-click and go to Make Origin, and it switches them. Sometimes it does it as a chain dimension, and you definitely want to change that to a baseline. Right-click, Create, and repeat that. You want overall width, location of each edge, overall depth, which you could do on the top, or you could do on the right, your choice. In this case, I can place both the depth and the height on the right. Right click, continue, and there's a chain dimension. I don't want change, I want baseline. Left click to place it, and in this case I'll choose the front edge as my origin. Right click, make origin, and then I can continue. Choosing baseline again. Coming out to the left. Again, I want to choose one of the end edges as my origin so that everything references off a baseline. Now I have overall width, the location of this edge in width, the location of this edge in width. Overall height, location of this edge, overall depth, location of this edge. As long as I have all the dimensions needed, and it's only needed on 2 views, you're actually good. You don't need the top view, but it does provide a lot of good shape description for us. We can see it in the isometric, so your choice. Keep it or don't. You choose to delete it, right click, and tell it to delete. I'm going to leave mine. I can adjust it so that it's a little bit closer, and the isometric can come in. The benefit here is I can get the isometric and top view a little closer. There's no dimension line there, so it's not running into it. I also want to avoid crossing any extension lines, and if I can, crossing any object lines with the extension lines. In this case, that's not happening. Once I have all 5 placed and I have the dimensions for them, I can start to go in and create spacing by creating a new sheet under the place views. That allows me to go into a drawing aspect where I can put in lines, rectangles, circles, arcs. Look at the examples that I have for you and decide how you want to separate this, if at all. It does help keep it a little cleaner. You come over to your border, click again, and click again. Once all the lines are in place, and once all the drawings are in place, you're ready to move on to creating some more of your views in the middle and right third. You can lay out the lines based on how you've laid out your parts. You can also freely move them around if it makes sense. In the end, you're going to wind up with something that might look a little bit like this. This is also a D-size sheet, and this is a rather advanced version. This is way detailed. Text at the top telling us what this section is. Text at the top over here telling us what this section is. I even have some QR codes. With it being a D-size sheet, I was only able to put in this much text to allow for this much of my drawing. That meant I couldn't explain everything I wanted to, but that's also not necessary. You might find that it's a little easier to make it match the one that's on my window. That's the most minimum. This, as well as if you maybe wanted to work with an E-size sheet, are some other options. I can provide more detail because I have more space. It does feel a little more empty, and some of the text is a little harder to read, but the idea is still there. Notice that once I've placed all my parts and their dimensions, I've placed the lines to separate them and even created boxes that are all 0.8 in width by 0.5 in height, and dropped in some text, which you can find under the Annotate tool. Text or leader text. In this case, I just chose text, and I dropped in where I wanted it, typed in what I wanted, highlighted it, changed it to the size that I'd like. You can also put in any custom size that you'd like. Just be careful you have enough space for it. You can bold it. You can change the type of font. And you can even change how it's spaced or how you want to justify it, both horizontally and vertically. Right click and say OK. I can now freely move that around, and if for some reason it's stacked, I can spread it out. That's the same kind of tool that I used to place this text, and I used the leader text to identify the different multi-views. Here in the multi-view of my cube, I left those shaded to show you the different colors. I then placed isometrics that were appropriately labeled as well. Top front left, top front right, and so forth. When you place those, it's simple to do, just like placing views in any other way. I have to select the file. In this case, instead of a part, I'm going to select an assembly. Click to place it, project it as needed. Remember, you can move those isometrics around freely. And you can always go back, edit them, and turn on their shading. If I edit the view for the front view, it'll change all of them that are dependent. I may also want to project from the bottom, selecting it first, projecting from the bottom to give me a back. Make sure you have space for everything and move on to placing your IPN file. In this case, I'll use this one. It starts off defaulting it as a front view. I'll choose ISO top right instead of having to go through my change view orientation button. Place it where I'd like it to be. Might have to scale it down. Might be able to make it as a 1:1. Once it's placed, make sure that you have it shaded. Remember, edit view, shaded, OK. Then we can annotate for these as well. Balloons, we have to select what we want, this file. We want the bill of materials, or the BOM, turned on. Structured is fine. And then always bring them out at an angle. 45 would be best, and then horizontally for the second segment. The leader line should never start vertical nor end in anything other than horizontal. Don't start vertical, come at an angle. Don't start horizontal, come at an angle. 45 is preferred, but sometimes you can't make that work. Always end horizontal, and then right-click, continue, and then the last place you click is where it'll place the bubble. All right, your balloons continue on around as long as you don't pull them into the center. You should be okay. Create a parts list. Click on it. Choose the view you want the parts list for. Say OK, and then place it. You can edit this parts list by clicking on it and going to Edit, or you can come over to the browser and edit it through here. Once you've decided how you want your parts list to look, you can come in and highlight things. You can even change the columns by going to the column chooser. Again, look at the examples that are provided. All you have to do is tell it that you're done. The last remaining part will be to fill in your title block. A lot of this auto-populates. You can get to it through the Inventor button, iProperties. Telling it what you want to have as summary, project, status, custom, save, it's all up to you. Notice how drawn by will change when I change the name. It defaults with who's logged into the computer. I'll place the company here. I can put in who approved the manufacturing, who checked over it, and the dates as well. I can do all of that in one go through instead of having to come back through it. Checked by, well, team leaders would be a good person to put in this place. Choose the date. Maybe they did it on Wednesday. I could put in engineering approved, manufacturing approved. I can even put in what the part number is, the stock number, a description, all this information.